The gunshot echoed through the underground parking garage like thunder trapped in concrete. Keisha's hands trembled as she pressed them against the cold metal of the car, her breath coming in short, desperate gasps. 20 feet away, Min-jae stood with a smoking gun pointed at the crumpled body on the ground, his face carved from ice, his designer suit splattered with blood that looked black under the fluorescent lights. This wasn't how it was supposed to end. 3 months ago, she didn't even know men like him existed. Min-jae's eyes found hers across the darkness, and for a moment something flickered in those obsidian depths. Then his second-in-command, Tae-sung, appeared from the shadows with 3 more men, and that flicker died. "Take her," Min-jae said, his voice empty of everything she thought she'd seen there. "Lock her in the West Wing. No one speaks to her, no one touches her, and someone clean this up." Keisha tried to run, but hands grabbed her arms, professional and unyielding. She screamed his name, the sound ripping from her throat raw and broken, but Min-jae had already turned away, phone pressed to his ear, speaking rapid Korean she couldn't understand. The last thing she saw before they dragged her into the elevator was the body on the ground, and the spreading pool of darkness beneath it that used to be a man. 3 months earlier, Seoul had seemed like a dream, wrapped in neon and possibility. Keisha Thompson had arrived with 2 suitcases, a dance instructor contract, and the kind of optimism that comes from never having your heart properly broken. At 26, she'd left Atlanta with her mother's prayers and her father's warnings, chasing something she couldn't quite name. Korea had always called to her. The music, the culture, the organized chaos of a country that moved like a choreographed dance she desperately wanted to learn. The K-pop academy in Gangnam was everything she'd hoped for. Bright-eyed trainees with impossible dedication, 12-hour practice days, the smell of sweat and dreams, and the particular kind of kimchi that the ajumma at the corner store packed into containers that leaked into Keisha's bag. Her Korean was terrible. She knew how to count, how to say hello and thank you and I'm sorry, which seemed to be the 3 pillars of polite existence anywhere. Her best friend Soo-jin was a former trainee who'd aged out of the idol dream at 23 and now worked at a coffee shop 3 blocks from the academy. They'd met during Keisha's second week when Keisha had accidentally ordered 5 iced Americanos instead of 1 because she'd mixed up her numbers. Soo-jin had laughed so hard she'd snorted, then sat with Keisha for an hour teaching her how to count properly, writing the numbers on napkins with little drawings to help her remember. "You have to meet my brother," Soo-jin said one night over samgyeopsal and soju at a tiny restaurant in Itaewon. "He's a businessman, very successful, very handsome, and very single." She waggled her eyebrows in a way that transcended language barriers. "I didn't come to Korea to date," Keisha said, but she was laughing. "I came to dance." "You can do both." Soo-jin poured them another shot. "Life is about balance, Unnie." Keisha had learned that Unnie meant older sister, a term of affection and respect. It made her chest warm every time Soo-jin said it, made her feel like she was building something real here, something that could be home. The first time she saw Min-jae Choi, he was standing outside the academy at midnight, leaning against a black Mercedes that probably cost more than her yearly salary. She'd stayed late perfecting a routine, and the streets were empty except for the occasional taxi and the ever-present hum of Seoul's insomnia. He was on his phone, speaking in low, clipped Korean, and he looked up as she walked past. Their eyes met for exactly 3 seconds. He was beautiful in the way dangerous things are beautiful. Sharp cheekbones, perfectly styled black hair, a mouth that looked like it had forgotten how to smile sometime around puberty. He wore a suit that fit like it had been born on his body, and there was a coldness in his gaze that made her shiver despite the summer heat. She looked away first, hugging her dance bag closer, walking faster. She could feel him watching her until she turned the corner, and only then did she let herself breathe properly. "That's weird," she muttered to herself in English, her mother tongue feeling like comfort food in her mouth. That's definitely weird. She didn't think about him again until a week later when Soo-jin didn't show up for their usual Thursday dinner. Keisha texted, called, even stopped by the coffee shop, but the manager said Soo-jin had called in sick. By Friday, Keisha was worried. By Saturday, she was at Soo-jin's apartment, and the landlord was saying something in Korean she couldn't fully understand, but the words police and missing came through clear enough. The fear was immediate and consuming. Keisha stood in the hallway of the building, staring at Soo-jin's locked door, and felt Seoul shift around her from dream to nightmare. She filed a missing person report with a police officer who spoke halting English and looked at her with something between pity and suspicion. Foreign friend, foreign problems. She could read it in his face even through the language barrier. On Sunday, they came for her. 3 men in suits, perfectly polite, speaking English with British accents that felt wrong in their mouths. They appeared at her apartment at 7 in the morning, and one of them showed her a document with her signature at the bottom, a document she'd never seen before. "You guaranteed a loan for Park Soo-jin," the tallest one said. His name was Mr. Kwon, and he smiled like a shark. 500 million won. She has disappeared. The debt transfers to you. Keisha's hands went numb. 500 million won. She did the math automatically, roughly $400,000. I didn't sign this. I would never. Your signature, your passport number, your foreign registration number. Mr. Kwon placed the papers on her tiny kitchen table. We are reasonable men, Miss Thompson. We understand this is unfortunate. We offer you 2 options. Pay the debt in full by the end of the month, or work for us until the debt is cleared. The way he said work made her skin crawl. And if I refuse both? His smile widened. Then we will be forced to pursue other collection methods. You are very far from home, Miss Thompson. Korea has laws, yes, but laws are complicated things, especially for foreigners who owe money to the wrong people. They left her with the papers and a phone number written on a business card. Keisha sat in her apartment for 3 hours, not moving, not thinking, just existing in a space where her entire life had collapsed while she was sleeping. She called her parents, but what could she say? That she'd been scammed? That her best friend had disappeared? That she might disappear too? She hung up before they answered. Some problems were too big to share. That night, she went back to the academy because dancing was the only thing that made sense anymore. She practiced until her feet bled through her shoes, until her reflection in the mirror blurred with sweat and tears, until her body screamed for her to stop, but her mind couldn't bear to be still. She was leaving through the back entrance at 2 in the morning when she saw him again. The man from the Mercedes. He was standing in the alley, and this time he wasn't alone. There were 4 other men, and they were beating someone on the ground with methodical, professional precision. Keisha froze. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to pretend she hadn't seen anything, to disappear back into the building. But then the man on the ground turned his head, and she saw his face in the streetlight. Young, maybe 20. His eye was swollen shut and blood ran from his mouth, and he was sobbing, begging in Korean she didn't understand. The beautiful man, the one from the Mercedes he was watching with his hands in his pockets, not participating but clearly in charge. His expression was bored, detached, like he was watching paint dry instead of a human being getting destroyed. She must have made a sound because his eyes snapped to hers. Recognition flickered. He said something in Korean, and the beating stopped. The men turned to look at her, and Keisha realized with crystal clarity that she was about to die in an alley in Gangnam, and her parents would never know what happened to her. But instead of approaching her, The beautiful man waved his hand dismissively, and his men dragged the sobbing victim away. He walked toward her slowly, like she was a nervous animal he didn't want to spook. Up close, he was even more devastating. Perfect skin, perfect features, perfect everything except his eyes, which were absolutely empty. "You shouldn't be here," he said in English. His voice was deep, accented but clear. "This is not a safe place for you." "I work here," Keisha managed. Her voice shook. "At the academy." "I know." He pulled out a pack of cigarettes, lit one with a silver lighter. "You're the American dance teacher, Keisha Thompson, 26 years old, from Atlanta. You've been in Korea for 6 weeks. You have a student visa that expires in 11 months. You live alone in Mapogu. You like tteokbokki from the street vendor near Hongdae Station, and you video call your mother every Sunday at 8 p.m. Korean time." The cigarette smoke curled between them like a question mark. Keisha's heart hammered against her ribs. "How do you know all that?" "I make it my business to know things." He took a drag, exhaled slowly. "Especially when those things walk past me at midnight and look at me like I'm human." "What?" "Most people look at me and see something else. You looked at me and saw a person." His lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. It was novel. Keisha should have run. Every cell in her body was screaming at her to run. But there was something in his voice, in the way he stood between her and the direction his men had taken their victim, like he was shielding her from something. "Who are you?" "My name is Minjae Choi, and you, Keisha Thompson, have a very serious problem." Her blood went cold. "What are you talking about?" "Park Soo-jin. 500 million won. Men who came to your apartment this morning." He crushed his cigarette under an expensive shoe. "You were right to be afraid. The people she borrowed from are not forgiving." "How do you—" But she already knew the answer. He knew everything. He probably knew what she'd had for breakfast. "Those men work for Kang Jin-ho. He runs most of the loan operations in Gangnam. He's ambitious, cruel, and he doesn't like foreigners." Minjae tilted his head, studying her. "You cannot pay the debt. You cannot run, they'll find you. And you definitely cannot work for them. Do you understand what that work would entail?" Keisha's throat closed. She nodded. "Good. Then you understand the situation you're in." He pulled out another cigarette but didn't light it, just rolled it between his fingers. "I can help you." "Why would you help me?" "Because I need something, and you need something. In my world, we call that symmetry." He finally lit the cigarette. "I need a wife. You need 500 million won and protection from Kang Jin-ho. I'm offering both." The world tilted. "You're insane!" "I'm practical." He pulled out a business card, offered it to her. She didn't take it, so he tucked it into the outer pocket of her dance bag. "Think about it. You have until the end of the month, which gives you 3 weeks. If you change your mind before then, call that number. If you don't call, I'll assume you've made other arrangements and will never speak again. And if I call, then we negotiate terms, sign papers, and you become Mrs. Choi. Your debt disappears. Kang Jin-ho will never touch you. And when my mother dies, she has 6 months, perhaps less. You'll receive a divorce and enough money to go anywhere you want." Keisha stared at him. "Your mother is dying, and you're shopping for a fake wife?" Something flickered in his eyes, there and gone like lightning. "My mother is dying, and her last wish is to see me married. She's a traditional woman. She wants grandchildren and family dinners and all the things I will never give her. But I can give her the illusion. I can give her peace." He turned to leave, then paused. "The man they were beating, he stole from me. In my world there are consequences. But I let him live because you were watching. Remember that." He walked away, and Keisha stood in the alley until her legs stopped shaking, until the sky started to lighten, until she could convince herself that the whole thing had been some kind of fever dream. But the business card in her bag was real. The embossed letters spelling out his name were real, and the deadline ticking down in her head was very, very real. She lasted 2 weeks. 2 weeks of jumping at shadows, of sleeping with her phone clutched in her hand, of watching the men in suits drive past her apartment building. 2 weeks of the police officer calling to say they had no leads on Soo-jin's disappearance, that maybe she'd left Seoul voluntarily, that sometimes people just needed to start over. 2 weeks of knowing that the only person who could save her was a man who'd watched someone get beaten like it was entertainment. She called the number on the 14th day. He answered on the first ring. "Miss Thompson." "I'll do it," she said. "But I have conditions." "Name them." "I want my own room, with a lock. You don't touch me. This is business only. And the second your mother passes, God rest her soul, I want the divorce papers and enough money to disappear." "Agreed. Anything else?" "I want to know what happened to Soo-jin." Silence on the other end. Then, "I'll look into it, but I won't promise you'll like what I find. I need to know." "Then you will. My driver will pick you up tomorrow at noon. Bring anything you want to keep. Everything else will be provided." He paused. "You're making the right choice, Keisha." "Don't," she said. "Don't pretend this is right. This is survival. There's a difference." He hung up without answering. Keisha sat on her floor and cried for the first time since arriving in Korea, great heaving sobs that came from somewhere deep and broken. When she was done, she packed her suitcases and didn't let herself look back. The driver arrived exactly at noon in a black Mercedes identical to the one she'd seen Min-jae leaning against that first night. He was an older man with kind eyes and careful English. "Mrs. Choi," he said, bowing slightly, "I am Sung-ho. I will be your driver." "I'm not Mrs. Choi yet," Keisha said, but she let him take her suitcases. "In this house, you are already Mrs. Choi. The wedding is a formality." He opened the car door. "Please." The drive to Min-jae's home took 30 minutes, winding up into the hills where Seoul's old money lived behind high walls and manicured gardens. The house, she couldn't call it anything else, was a compound of traditional Korean architecture mixed with modern glass and steel. It was beautiful in a cold, untouchable way. Min-jae was waiting in the foyer. He wore casual clothes, black pants, white shirt, no tie, but he still looked like he could buy and sell countries before breakfast. "Welcome," he said. "I'll show you your room." Her room was on the second floor, facing a garden with a koi pond. It was larger than her entire Atlanta apartment, decorated in soft neutrals with a bathroom that had a soaking tub and a shower with 6 different settings. The bed was enormous and looked like sleeping on a cloud, and there was a lock on the door, a heavy, solid deadbolt that clicked into place with a sound like a promise. "This is yours," Min-jae said from the doorway. He didn't enter. "No one will disturb you here. The kitchen is stocked. The house staff speaks English. If you need anything, press 9 on the phone." "When's the wedding?" Keisha asked. 3 days. Courthouse. Quick. Legal." He pulled an envelope from his pocket, set it on the dresser just inside the door. "That's the contract. Read it. If you have questions, ask. If you want changes, tell me. This only works if we're both clear on expectations." "What do I tell people? About us? About how we met?" "The truth, mostly. You're a dance instructor. We met through mutual friends. We fell in love quickly." His expression didn't change. Love at first sight is believable when the woman is beautiful and the man is rich. No one will question it too deeply. Heat crawled up Keisha's neck. "I'm not beautiful." "You are, but that's irrelevant. What matters is that people believe I think you are." He stepped back. "Dinner is at 7. Cook will make whatever you like. Just tell her." He left, closing the door behind him. Keisha stood in the center of her new room, surrounded by luxury that felt like a cage, and wondered what exactly she'd agreed to. The contract was 10 pages of legal Korean with an English translation attached. It outlined everything. The marriage was for appearance only, no physical intimacy required or expected. Separate rooms, separate lives, public appearances as needed. Upon the death of his mother, Park Mi-sun, the marriage would be dissolved, and Keisha would receive 200 million won, about 160,000 US dollars. Her debt to Kang Jin-ho's organization would be cleared within 48 hours of signing. There was a clause about discretion. She couldn't speak to media, couldn't write about their arrangement, couldn't expose him. There was a clause about safety. His security team would protect her, but she had to follow their protocols. And there was a clause about her room, spelled out in careful language. The second-floor east bedroom is the exclusive private space of Party B, Keisha Thompson. Party A, Min Jae-choi, will not enter this space without explicit verbal permission from Party B. She signed it with hands that barely shook anymore. 3 days later, she married a stranger in a courthouse while his lawyer and his driver served as witnesses. Min Jae slipped a platinum ring on her finger that fit perfectly, and she wondered how he'd known her size. He kissed her cheek when the judge declared them married, and his lips were warm and brief, and she felt nothing except relief that it was over. "Mrs. Choi," he said, and there was something in his voice that made her look up. His eyes held hers for a moment longer than necessary. "Welcome to the family." The first week was surreal. She woke up in a palace, ate breakfast prepared by a cook who smiled and called her ma'am, and had a driver ready to take her anywhere she wanted. The academy had been understanding when she'd called to explain she was getting married and needed time off. They'd practically cheered, asking when they could meet her husband. She'd mumbled something about soon and hung up feeling like a fraud. Min Jae was gone most of the time. He left before she woke and returned after she slept, moving through the house like a ghost. She'd hear him sometimes, late at night, moving through the rooms below hers. Once she'd gotten up to get water and seen him standing in the garden, smoking, staring at nothing. She'd watched from the window, and the loneliness rolling off him was so profound, she'd felt it through the glass. She didn't approach him. This was business. Symmetry. Nothing more. The house staff treated her with careful respect, but she could see the questions in their eyes. Cook, she'd insisted Keisha call her that instead of her name, and she had been with Min Jae's family for 30 years and clearly thought Keisha was either a gold digger or insane, possibly both. "Mr. Min Jae is a good man," Cook said one afternoon while teaching Keisha how to make proper kimchi. Her English was broken, but earnest. "He has a good heart, just hidden very deep." "I'm sure he does," Keisha said, because what else could she say? "You will see. Give him time. He will open up to you." Cook patted her hand with fingers that smelled like garlic and ginger. "You are good for him. I feel this." Keisha didn't have the heart to explain that she'd never be good for anyone, that this was temporary, that she was just a means to an end. So she smiled and learned how to pack the cabbage into jars and tried not to think about the man who was technically her husband, but felt like a stranger she'd passed in a hallway once. The first public appearance was at a charity gala 2 weeks after the wedding. Min Jae came to her room, knocked first, waited for permission, and presented her with a dress in a garment bag. "For tonight," he said. "If it doesn't fit or you hate it, there are 3 others downstairs." The dress was burgundy silk, elegant and modest, the kind of thing that probably cost more than her car back home. It fit like it had been made for her, because it probably had been. In the car on the way to the hotel, Min Jae briefed her. "There will be photographers. Other business families, politicians. Everyone will want to meet you. Be polite, smile. If anyone makes you uncomfortable, stay close to me. What kind of business are you in, exactly? Keisha asked. She'd been afraid to ask before, but the question had been eating at her since that night in the alley. Import-export, real estate, investments. His tone said the subject was closed. And the beating in the alley? That was about imports? His jaw tightened. That was about respect and consequences, two things that keep my world turning. Your world sounds terrifying. It is. He looked at her then, really looked at her. You don't have to do this. I can take you home right now. Wire you money to get back to America. You'd still have the debt, but you'd be far away from it. For a moment, she considered it. But then she thought about Soo Jin, still missing. About the men who'd come to her apartment with shark smiles. About running for the rest of her life. No, she said. I made a deal. I keep my deals. Something that might have been respect flickered in his expression. Good. So do I. The gala was overwhelming hundreds of people in evening wear, champagne flowing like water, conversations in Korean she couldn't follow. Min-jae kept her close, his hand at the small of her back, introducing her with the same phrase each time. My wife, Keisha. The words felt strange coming from his mouth. The looks they received ranged from curious to scandalized. She heard the whispers, even in Korean, foreign, black, American, not one of us. Min-jae heard them too. She could tell by the way his posture changed, the way his smile took on a razor edge. When one older man made a comment that caused several people to laugh, Min-jae responded in Korean that cut through the laughter like ice water. The man paled and apologized, bowing deeply. Whatever Min-jae had said, it worked. What did he say? Keisha asked when they were alone at their table. Something crude about whether you were a good investment. Min-jae sipped his whiskey. I explained that insulting my wife was insulting me, and insulting me was a poor financial decision. You didn't have to defend me. This is just for show. Even shows have standards. He set down his glass. And you are my wife, paper or not. That means something in this world. Later, after midnight, when they were back home, and she was standing at her door ready to disappear into her room, he stopped her with her name. Keisha. She turned. He was backlit by the hallway light, his expression in shadow. You did well tonight. Thank you. It was just acting. No, he said quietly. Acting is pretending to be something you're not. You were yourself. That's harder and braver. He walked away before she could respond, and Keisha stood in her doorway for a long time, trying to figure out what she was feeling and failing completely. The visit to his mother came the next week. Park Mi-soon was in a hospice facility in Gangnam, a place that was too nice to call a hospital and too medical to call a home. She was tiny in the bed, her skin like rice paper, her eyes the same obsidian as her son's but warmer, softer, still holding light. Oma, Min-jae said, and his voice cracked on the word. He took her hand so gently it made Keisha's throat close. This is Keisha, my wife. Mi-sun's eyes found Keisha's, and she smiled. Come here, daughter. Let me see you. Keisha approached the bed, and Mi-sun reached up with trembling fingers to touch her face. Beautiful, she said in English. My son chose well. I'm honored to meet you, Mrs. Park, Keisha said. You are kind. I can see this in your eyes. Mi-sun looked at her son. She has a good heart, Min-jae. Guard it carefully. I will, Oma. They stayed for an hour, and Keisha watched Min-jae transform into someone she didn't recognize, gentle, patient, present in a way he never was at home. He told his mother stories, made her laugh, held her hand like it was the most precious thing in the world. And Mi-sun watched him with love so pure it was almost painful to witness. When they left, Min-jae was silent in the car. His hands gripped the steering wheel he'd driven himself. No Sung-ho, and his knuckles were white. "She seems comfortable," Keisha offered. "She's dying. Comfortable is relative." His voice was flat. 6 months, they said. But it's been 8. She's holding on for something. I think it was this. Me, married, settled, not alone. You gave her that. That's a gift. He laughed, but it was broken. I gave her a lie. There's no gift in that. Sometimes, Keisha said carefully, lies that bring comfort are kinder than truths that bring pain. He looked at her then, and his eyes were wet. You almost make me believe that. That night, she heard him again in the garden, but this time, when she looked out the window, he was sitting on the bench by the koi pond, with his head in his hands, and she could see his shoulders shaking. Before she could think better of it, she grabbed a blanket and went downstairs. He looked up when she approached, and didn't bother to hide the tears on his face. You should be sleeping. So should you. She sat next to him, not touching but close. Want to talk about it? There's nothing to talk about. My mother is dying. I'm watching her die. I can't stop it. No, but you made her last days happy. That's not nothing. It's not enough. He wiped his face with the back of his hand. Nothing is ever enough. They sat in silence for a while. Then Keisha did something stupid. She draped the blanket over both of them and rested her head on his shoulder. He stiffened, and she almost pulled away, but then he relaxed and let her stay. Tell me about her, Keisha said. When she was young. So he did. He told her about his mother dancing in the kitchen, about her terrible singing voice, and her even worse cooking before she'd hired cook. He told her about the way she'd bandage his scraped knees and tell him stories about dragons and tigers and brave boys who became men. He talked until the sky started to lighten, until his voice was hoarse, until he'd given Keisha every memory he could bear to share. When he finally stopped, she could feel him looking at her. Thank you, he said. For what? For listening, for sitting here, for not asking me to explain why I'm broken. You're not broken. You're grieving. There's a difference. Is there? But he said it like a real question, like he actually wanted an answer. Yeah, Keisha said. Broken things can't love. And you love your mother so much it's killing you. That's not broken, that's human. He didn't respond, but his hand found hers under the blanket, and he held on like she was the only thing keeping him anchored to the earth. They stayed there until Sung-ho found them at dawn, and gently suggested they move inside before the household staff started gossiping. After that night, something shifted. Min-jae started coming home earlier. He'd find her in the kitchen helping cook or in the garden reading, and he'd sit with her. They'd talk about small things, her dance classes, his meetings, the new restaurant that opened in Itaewon. He taught her Korean words beyond the basics, laughing when she butchered the pronunciation. She taught him to make proper grits, and he ate them with the same serious expression he wore to business meetings. This is terrible, he said after the first bite. You're eating it wrong. You need butter and salt and maybe hot sauce. He tried again, and his face softened. Okay, this is good. Welcome to the American South. They fell into patterns. He started knocking on her door in the mornings to see if she wanted coffee. She started leaving books she'd finished outside his room so he could read them. Once, she heard him laughing at something in one of the novels she'd shared, and the sound was so unexpected and wonderful that she stood outside his door just listening. The staff noticed. Cook smiled more. Sung-ho started making comments about young love that made them both roll their eyes. But no one was fooled, least of all Keisha. This was still temporary, still business. The affection growing between them was just a side effect of proximity. When his mother died, she'd leave, and he'd move on, and they'd both forget this strange interlude where they played house. Except she was starting to suspect she wouldn't forget. She was starting to suspect this was the most real thing she'd ever felt. 2 months in, Min-jae came home with blood on his shirt. It wasn't the first time, but it was the first time he came to her room and knocked. "I need help," he said when she opened the door. His face was pale, his breathing shallow. "I've been stabbed. It's not deep, but it needs cleaning." Keisha didn't hesitate. She pulled him inside the first time he'd crossed that threshold and made him sit on the bathroom counter. His shirt was ruined, stuck to his skin with blood. She cut it off with scissors, trying not to focus on the expanse of his chest, the scars that littered his torso like a map of violence. The wound was on his left shoulder, a slice about 3 inches long. Not deep, like he'd said, but bleeding steadily. She cleaned it with supplies from the first aid kit, and he didn't make a sound even though she knew it had to hurt. "Who did this?" she asked. "Business rival? Disagreement about territory?" "You mean your import-export business?" "Yes, that." His jaw was tight. "I'll handle it." "By doing what? Stabbing him back?" She taped gauze over the wound, probably too roughly. "This is insane, Min-jae. You're going to get yourself killed." "Would you care?" He asked it lightly, but there was something underneath. Something that sounded like hope. Keisha met his eyes. "Yes, I would care. You're—" She paused, searching for the right word. "You're my friend, I think." "You think?" "I don't usually make friends with people who get stabbed. It's new territory for me." He smiled, and it reached his eyes. "Me too. The friend part, not the stabbing. That's old territory." She finished bandaging him, but neither of them moved. He was still sitting on her bathroom counter, shirtless and bleeding and looking at her like she was something precious. And she was standing between his legs with her hands on his skin. And suddenly the air felt different, charged, impossible. "Keisha," he said, and her name in his mouth sounded like a prayer. "Don't," she whispered. "Don't what?" "Don't look at me like that. Don't make this complicated." "It's already complicated." His hand came up to cup her face, thumb brushing her cheekbone. "It became complicated the moment I saw you. I just didn't know it yet." She should have pulled away, should have reminded him about the contract, the arrangement, the fact that this was temporary and transactional and not real. But instead, she leaned into his touch, and his hand slid into her hair, and he pulled her closer until their foreheads touched. "I made you a promise," he said, "that I wouldn't touch you unless you asked. I keep my promises, Keisha." "I know. So if you want me to stop, tell me now. Because if you don't, I'm going to kiss you, and then we're going to pretend it never happened, and we're going to go back to being friends who live in the same house. Can you do that?" No. She couldn't, but she nodded anyway. He kissed her soft and slow, like he was learning a language only she could teach. His lips were warm and careful, and tasted like coffee, and something darker, something that was just him. Her hands found his chest, his heartbeat thundering under her palms, and he made a sound low in his throat that sent electricity down her spine. When they broke apart, they were both breathing hard. His eyes were black with wanting, and she could feel herself falling into them like a warm, dangerous ocean. "We should forget this happened," she said. "Yes, we should." Neither of them moved. Then Sung-ho's voice called from downstairs about dinner, and the spell broke. Min-jae slid off the counter, found a clean shirt in her closet that he must have left there at some point, and pulled it on. At her door, he paused. "Thank you. For fixing me." "You're not fixed, you're patched. There's a difference." He smiled that sad smile that she was starting to love. Story of my life. After he left, Keisha sat on her bathroom floor and let herself admit the truth. She was in love with her fake husband, and it was going to destroy her. 3 months in, everything shattered. She woke up to Sung Ho pounding on her door, his usually calm voice sharp with panic. "Mrs. Choi, you must come now!" She threw on clothes and ran downstairs to find police in her living room. The officer in charge spoke through a translator, and the words didn't make sense. Soo-jin, found, dead, had been dead for months, body in the Han River. Keisha couldn't breathe. The room spun. Someone caught her, Min-jae, his arms around her, his voice in her ear saying things she couldn't process. Soo-jin was dead. Had been dead probably since the day she disappeared. Which meant the whole time Keisha had been here, playing house with Min-jae, her best friend had been gone. The police asked questions. When had she last seen Soo-jin? Did Soo-jin have enemies? Did she seem worried? Keisha answered mechanically, her voice coming from somewhere far away. Yes. No. Maybe. I don't know. I don't know anything. When they left, she pushed out of Min-jae's arms and walked to her room, locked the door, curled up on the floor and cried until she made herself sick. She heard Min-jae outside her door, heard him calling her name, but she didn't answer. Couldn't answer. Later hours, days, she lost track. Cook brought her food she didn't eat. Sung Ho left water bottles she didn't drink. And Min-jae knocked every few hours, speaking to her through the door. Keisha, please, let me help you. You can't help me. No one can help me. Then let me sit with you. You shouldn't be alone right now. But she wanted to be alone, needed to be alone. Because if she let him in, if she let him comfort her, she'd break completely. And she couldn't break. Not yet. Not while there were still questions. On the third day, she emerged. Min-jae was sleeping in the hallway outside her door, his back against the wall, his face drawn. He woke when she opened the door, scrambling to his feet. I need you to be honest with me, she said. Her voice was raw. Did you know? About Soo-jin? No, I swear to you I didn't know. But you could find out. You have resources, you have people. She grabbed his shirt. Find out who killed her. Please, I need to know. Keisha, please, Min-jae, if you ever cared about me at all, do this. Find out who killed my friend. He pulled her into his arms, and she let him, because she had nothing left. I will. I promise you. I'll find out. He kept his promise. 2 weeks later, he came to her with a name. Kang Jin-ho, the same man who'd held her debt, the same man whose organization had sent the sharks to her apartment. He'd had Soo-jin killed when she couldn't repay her loan. Where is he? Keisha asked. They were in Min-jae's office, the door closed, his expression grim. Keisha, don't. Where is he? Under my protection, in a safe house. I can't touch him without starting a war. She laughed, and it was sharp and broken. So you knew. You've known this whole time that the man who killed my friend is alive and walking around, and you didn't tell me? I just found out 2 days ago. I've been trying to figure out how to handle it. Handle it? Her voice rose. She was my best friend. She was like my sister. And you're worried about handling it? I'm worried about you. He stood, came around the desk. If I kill him, there will be retaliation. His organization will come for me, for my people, for you. I can't protect you if we're in the middle of a gang war. Then don't protect me. Let me go. End this marriage and let me go. No. Why not? Your mother is gone. She'd died peacefully 2 weeks ago, with Min-jae holding her hand. There's no reason for me to stay anymore. Because I love you. The words exploded out of him. Because I fell in love with you, and I can't let you go. And I know I'm selfish and this is wrong, but I need you to stay. Keisha stared at him. You don't love me. You love the idea of me. The wife you can show off, the woman who makes you feel human. But that's not love, Min-jae. That's convenience. You're wrong. Am I? Then prove it. Get justice for Sujin. Be the man I thought you were instead of the monster everyone says you are. She walked out, and he didn't follow. For 3 days, they didn't speak. She stayed in her room. He stayed in his. The house felt like a tomb. On the 4th day, he knocked on her door. Come with me. There's something you need to see. She followed him to the underground parking garage, the one beneath the compound. And there, tied to a chair with blood on his face and terror in his eyes, was Kang Jin-ho. What did you do? Keisha whispered. What you asked. I got him. Min-jae pulled out a gun, offered it to her. He's yours. Justice. Revenge. Whatever you want to call it. I'm giving him to you. She stared at the gun like it was a snake. I can't kill someone. Then I will. Just say the word. Kang Jin-ho was sobbing, begging in Korean. Tae-sung appeared with 3 other men, and Min-jae spoke to them in rapid Korean. They nodded. Last chance, Min-jae said to Keisha. He killed your friend. He destroyed your life. This is your choice. And that's when she understood. This was a test. He was showing her his world, the darkness he lived in, the choices that defined him. He was asking if she could love him anyway. She couldn't. No, she said. Put the gun down. Keisha. I said no. I won't let you become a murderer because of me. I won't carry that weight. Tears streamed down her face. Let him go. He'll come after you, after us. Then we deal with it. But not like this. Not with more death. She grabbed his arm. Please, Min-jae, if you love me, if you ever loved me, don't do this. For a long moment they stood there, the gun between them, a man's life hanging in the balance. Then Min-jae lowered the weapon. He said something in Korean. Tae-sung argued. Min-jae cut him off with a sharp command. The men grabbed Kang Jin-ho and dragged him away, still crying. I'm letting him live, Min-jae said flatly. But if he comes near you again, I will kill him, slowly, and you won't stop me. Okay. He turned to walk away, and she called his name. He stopped but didn't turn around. Thank you, she said, for choosing me over revenge. I'll always choose you. That's the problem. His shoulders were rigid. Pack your things. I'll have Sung-ho take you wherever you want to go in the morning. The divorce papers will be ready in a week. Min-jae? But he was already gone, disappearing into the shadows of the garage. Keisha stood there alone, surrounded by concrete and darkness, and realized she'd just lost the only person who made her feel like home. She didn't pack. Instead, she sat in her room and thought about everything that had happened in the past 3 months. About a man who watched someone get beaten, and a man who held his mother's hand. About violence and tenderness, about the space between monster and man, and how love was the bridge that connected them. At midnight, she went to his room and knocked. No answer. She tried the door, found it unlocked, and went in. He was on the balcony, smoking, staring at the Seoul skyline like it held answers. I thought you'd be gone by now, he said without turning. I'm not very good at following instructions. Clearly. She walked out to stand beside him. I don't want a divorce. You should. I'm everything you said. A monster. A killer. The kind of man your mother warned you about. Maybe. But you're also the man who kept his promise not to touch me until I asked. The man who cried for his mother. The man who let an enemy go because I asked him to. She took the cigarette from his fingers, took a drag even though she didn't smoke, coughed, and gave it back. You're complicated, Min-jae Choi, but you're not a monster. You don't know what I've done. No. But I know what you didn't do, and I know how you make me feel. She grabbed his hand. I'm scared. Of you. Of this world. Of falling in love with someone whose job description includes violence. But I'm more scared of leaving and spending the rest of my life wondering what if. He finally turned to look at her. What are you saying? I'm saying I love you too. I'm saying I want to stay. I'm saying... She took a breath. I'm asking. Touch me, Min-jae. Keep your promise. His hands came up to frame her face, and he kissed her like a man drowning, like she was air and water and earth. He kissed her like he'd been waiting his whole life for permission, and now that he had it, he'd never let go. They stumbled inside, mouths never breaking apart, and when they fell onto his bed, it felt like coming home. He worshipped her body like it was sacred, learned every curve and sound, whispered her name in Korean and English until the words blurred together. And when they finally came together, it wasn't the transaction she'd expected when she signed that contract. It was a promise, a choice, a beginning. Afterward, they lay tangled together, and he traced patterns on her skin. My world is dangerous, he said. People will always come after us. You'll never be completely safe. No one's ever completely safe. At least with you, I know the monster will protect me. I'm not a monster anymore. You ruined me. But he was smiling. Good. Monsters are overrated anyway. They fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other, and when morning came, Keisha didn't leave. She stayed. She chose him. And he chose her back every single day after that. 6 months later, they renewed their vows, real ones this time, in a garden ceremony with Cook crying and Sung-ho beaming, and a small gathering of people who'd become family. Keisha wore white with African print accents, and Min-jae wore traditional hanbok, and when they kissed, it tasted like future. The world didn't become safer. Min-jae's business didn't become less complicated. But they faced it together, a black woman from Atlanta and a Korean Mafia boss who'd forgotten how to be human until she reminded him. And sometimes, late at night when they lay in bed together, he'd whisper, "Thank you for asking me to touch you, for seeing me as a man instead of a monster." And she'd whisper back, "Thank you for waiting until I did, for keeping your promise, for being worth the risk." Seoul sparkled outside their window, a city of light and shadow, beauty and danger. Just like them. Just like love. Because in the end, that's what love was, choosing someone despite the darkness, because the light they brought was worth every shadow you'd have to walk through. And Keisha Thompson Choi had walked through plenty of shadows, but with Min-jae beside her, she'd learned to dance in them. If you enjoyed this story of love, redemption, and second chances, please subscribe to our channel, hit that like button, and let us know in the comments what kind of Afro-Korean story you'd like to see next. Your support means everything and helps us bring you more cinematic romance stories that celebrate love across cultures. Until next time, keep believing in love that defies expectations.